Hey guys, what's going on? Banana156 here with another video. Remember to subscribe, like, dislike, comment, do all that stuff. I do read all comments, so make sure to leave a comment. And if you dislike the video, leave a dislike. And if you like the video, leave a like. And if you have a question or a disagreement, leave a comment below, and I'll respond and answer it or rebuttal. But yeah, so in this video we're going to be taking a break from the geopolitical stuff. Expect more videos than that. I do have 2 more videos on China and World War III coming out in the coming weeks, in the coming weeks. Do expect those. But yeah, we're taking a break from the geopolitical videos for a while, at least for now. And in this video, we're going to be talking about systemic racism, and it kind of amazed me how it took me this long to get to this, because it's really relevant. But I have talked about a lot of components of systemic racism in other videos, like in the criminal justice system video, in the education system video, and in the drug war video. I have all talked about things that lead to systemic racism, and I'm going to go over it as a whole, and I'm going to go over a few new things, but first I'm going to summarize what was in those videos. So let's start with the educational system video, because I feel like I can get through that one the quickest and the simplest. So in our American education system, public schools are funded by property taxes, meaning that the school district that you're in is funded by the property taxes of the houses in that school district, meaning that poorer communities have less funding for their schools. And black people are on average poorer than white people, meaning that their schools have on average less funding than white people's schools, meaning that black people get a worse education, furthering wealth inequality, because they have worse education and have a harder time getting into college because of that, and have just a worse time in general because of having a poor education because of property taxes. So what's the solution to that problem? The main solution is just not have school funding be based on property taxes. Have like all the property taxes from the country be put in a pool, and each country gets a fair distribution of that money. So like schools with more kids get a larger amount of funding, schools with less kids get a smaller amount of funding, but every school gets the funding that they need to provide a good education to the students who go there, meaning that poor communities do not have a better education or do not have a worse education, but an equal education. And another problem with the educational system is because of the poor funding, it means that private schools in the area that are propped up by different things that have more funding will perform better than them, and will incentivize the government to fund the public school less and put their money more towards school things, or like school choice or whatever, to allow kids that would go to the public school go to the private school instead, which takes funding away from the public school, which creates a vicious cycle of them losing teachers and being understaffed and having overcrowded classrooms, which is terrible for poor communities. And yeah, so that's the basic educational issue. If you want a more in-depth thing, you can go watch my whole video on the education system. I'm fairly proud of that one. But yeah, go watch that one if you want a more in-depth coverage of the issue. This will just be, I'm just recovering a lot of the issues before we get into different ones with systemic racism. Now the next one is the drug war. The drug war is essentially made to kind of reinvent slavery. Now that's a pretty ambitious statement, I know, but I have stuff to back it up. So the drug war is essentially making all drugs legal, which really affects poor people much more than it does rich people. Which, again, with the education thing, black people are on average poorer than white people, and this means that they are disproportionately affected by the police and over-policing. And the drug war also leads to over-policing in poorer areas, meaning to more arrests in poorer areas, which means more black people are being arrested on average. This is really bad and makes it a lot harder for black people to get out of that generational wealth gap and get higher up in the hierarchy. So that makes it incredibly hard. And so yeah, that's the basics of the drug war. Not to mention all well, we'll talk about the rest of it in the prison system. So the prison system is kind of an extension of the drug war. The prison system is really terrible because a lot of it is handled by private prisons, and those private prisons are guaranteed at least 90% occupancy, which means they are encouraged to arrest more people for crimes, which means leads to over-policing again, and more people getting arrested, which means more poor people getting arrested, which means more black people getting arrested, and that is just terrible. And not only that, there's no social programs, or there's very few social programs for people out of jail, or when they get out of jail. So it's incredibly hard for them to find a job, incredibly hard for them to get back on their feet after jail. So it's easier to just turn to crime, and that's what a lot of them do. And that's why we have such a high reoffense rate in America. Now again, if you want a more in-depth analysis of those issues, go watch my video on the drug war and go watch my video on the prison system. They're both good videos, and they're worth your time if you're to better understand this issue as a whole. So now, first I want to talk about the criminal justice system outside of the prison system. So first of all, black people on average get higher sentencing than white people, and they are disproportionately represented in the prison population. This is because of factors like the drug war and over-policing in poorer neighborhoods, because of the drug war and stuff like that. That is why that happens, and not to mention implicit bias in police officers. So a large problem with police officers is, in cities, a lot of them are often from the suburbs surrounding the city, which means they're not really from there, which is a huge problem. Police officers need to be from the community they're protecting, so they have a better connection to the citizens and are more fair with arrests and stuff and more fair with policing. That's just how police need to work. And the next thing is that 80% of police officers voted for Trump in the past election. Or I think that statistic might be from 2016. I'm not sure, but it's a large amount that are Trump supporters. And a lot of them are very power-hungry nationalists. Like, just straight up, they're power-hungry racists. And that leads to terrible implicit bias. And that's where things like George Floyd happened, because Derek Chauvin is a racist piece of shit and killed him for no reason. That's why things like George Floyd happen, because of the implicit bias in police officers and where police officers are from, and how little training it takes to be a police officer. In the US, it takes like 20 weeks of training or whatever to be a police officer. In other countries, it takes years, like a 2-year degree to become a police officer. Here it's 20 weeks, which makes it incredibly easy for power-hungry individuals to become police officers, which isn't good. So that's the implicit bias part. And there's also implicit biases in judges and the way that judges are appointed, and often appointed by Republicans. It leads to racist judges with heavy implicit bias, or even explicit bias. Explicit bias is pretty common as well. But there's lots of biases in our justice system, which is terrible, which leads to over-sentencing for black people and over-incarceration for black people, which is just terrible and shouldn't happen at all, which makes it harder for them to decrease the generational wealth gap. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is a completely new thing, and so ignoring explicit and implicit biases, say they don't exist at all, because a lot of conservatives will make that argument. But the argument they need to make there is that it doesn't matter. Like, yes, those things do exist, and I still stand by that they exist, but it still doesn't matter because of our economic system. Because in our current economic system, on the rungs of the economic ladder, there is stickiness. So, with the quintile you're born in, you are most likely to stay in that quintile your entire life. That's how it's going to happen most of the time. Which means that without implicit or explicit biases, people that start lower on the economic ladder will tend to stay lower. Meaning that if you are born black, you are more likely to be poor, and if you are poor, you are more likely to stay poor. Meaning that even though you are in a completely non-racist society, because of your economic system and the race that you were born, you will end up poor in the future. And this is because, like, even if the society currently isn't racist, that's because of racist biases in the past of that society. And like all the things I mentioned, like the drug war, slavery, segregation, all of that stuff leads to that. where black people are on average poorer than white people. They're in like the bottom 2 quintiles, and even the black people that are in the middle quintile are more likely to move down than up. Meaning that it is incredibly hard for black people to bridge the generational white gap between them and other ethnicities, putting them at a systemic disadvantage, meaning systemic racism, because regardless of implicit or explicit bias, they are at a disadvantage because of the economy and because of the way our economic system works, and why capitalism is a failure. Well, it's not a failure in the ways that it means. It succeeds in the way that it means to succeed, but for the people it is a failure, and for all minorities and all poor people it is a failure. And so yeah, with a system that isn't implicit or explicitly racist, the system can still be racist through racism by outcome. I think that's what it's called. But yeah. So I may have glossed over things a bit too much in this video, but if you want to get more in-depth analysis, go watch my drug war video, go watch my education system video, and go watch my prison system video. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff. If you like the video, leave a like. If you dislike the video, leave a dislike. And if you disagree with me, leave a comment, or if you have any questions, leave a comment and I will respond. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. And yeah, thanks for all the recent support on the videos. I really love making these videos, so it's awesome to see that they're doing well. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys